It began not with a bang, but with the sterile chime of a smartphone on a gray Thursday morning, 4 days before the reunion. I was in the trenches of the weekday grind, one hand spreading peanut butter on whole wheat, the other fishing a rogue Lego piece from the sink drain. The coffee machine hissed its weak protest, and outside, a cold spring rain streaked the kitchen windows in endless, melancholy tears. My phone lit up on the counter. A text from Steve, my older brother by 3 years, my father's shadow, the family's self-appointed executor of all things traditional. Family reunion at the lake house next weekend. Dad's 65th. Big one. The big 6'5". Be there. A flicker of warmth cut through the morning chaos. The lake house. My childhood summers were painted in its hues. The scent of pine and wet dockwood, the slap of screen doors, the endless, lazy drone of cicadas. My children, Mercy, 8 going on 30 with her fierce empathy, and Noah, a whirlwind of 5-year-old curiosity, had only been twice, but they spoke of it like a mythical kingdom. They'd been crafting fishing pole fantasies for Grandpa for weeks. I wiped grape jelly from my thumb, smiling as I typed back. Wouldn't miss it. Kids are already packed. Noah's insisting on bringing his lucky worm. It's rubber. 3 dancing dots. Then nothing. Then the dots again, a digital heartbeat of hesitation. My own heart did a subtle synchronized dip. Actually, need to talk about that. The toast popped up, startling me. Mercy, methodically dissecting her cereal bowl to create a floating island of O's, looked up. "What's wrong, Mommy?" "Nothing, baby," I said, the lie too quick, too bright. "Uncle Steve just being Uncle Steve." I typed, my fingers suddenly clumsy. "About what?" The response was immediate, as if he'd been waiting with his finger poised over the send button. "We're keeping it adults only this year. No kids. Dad's 65, he wants a proper, quiet celebration, real conversation, good scotch, no chaos. You understand."
Don't be dramatic, Sophie. It's not about them. Just trying to honor Dad's wishes. He's getting older, wants peace. You know how Noah is with breakables. And Mercy's constant questions, it's just not the vibe. The casual cruelty of the vibe ignited something in me. I called. He answered on the second ring, a sigh already baked into his hello. "Steve, they've been to the lake house a dozen times. They know the breakables. We watch them." "Things change, Sophia." His voice was smooth, practiced, the same tone he used to placate nervous clients at the family business, Chinwood Industrial Supply, our grandfather's company, now his empire. "Look, it's one weekend. Get a sitter. Enjoy some adult time with Michael. Remember what that's like?" A slick, insinuating dig. I ignored it. "Your kids are going, aren't they? Bella and Jake?" A beat of silence, thick enough to spread. Then, "Bella's 13, Jake is 15, they're practically adults. They can have a conversation, they don't need constant supervision." The goalposts had not just moved, they'd been teleported to another stadium. So it's not no kids, it's no young kids, specifically mine. See, this is why I wanted to text. You always twist things, make it personal. It's Dad's birthday, can't you for once just respect his wishes without making it a referendum on your parenting? The air left my lungs. For once. A lifetime of minor criticisms condensed into 2 venomous words. I didn't have the breath to fight with. I just hung up. I served the toast, kissed Mercy's head, and mechanically finished packing Noah's lunchbox, my mind a roaring static. The betrayal was a 2-headed beast. 1, the exclusion of my children. 2, the weaponization of our father's affection, real or imagined. That night, after the stories were read and the nightlight cast its galaxy of stars on Noah's ceiling, I found Michael in the kids' bathroom. He was on his knees, wrestling with the ancient faucet that had developed a melancholic drip. I leaned against the doorframe, the words tumbling out in a hushed, frantic whisper. The text, the call, the vibe, the targeted exclusion masked as a generational desire for peace. He listened. He didn't interrupt. His hands, competent and steady, continued their work with the wrench, but I saw the change. His shoulders, usually relaxed, drew into a tight line. His jaw, shadowed with late-day stubble, clenched with a rhythmic pulse. The gentle drip, drip into the porcelain sink became a metronome for my rising anger. When I finished, the last word, supervision, hanging in the humid bathroom air, he turned the wrench one final, definitive time. The dripping stopped. The sudden silence was profound. He looked up at me. His eyes, usually warm and crinkled with laughter lines, were flat and dark, like shale.
"We're not going," he said. His voice was quiet, devoid of question. It wasn't a pronouncement. It was a revelation, a bedrock truth we'd both arrived at independently. "We're not," I echoed, the certainty a solid weight in my chest. He gave a single, sharp nod. Good. 2 days later, the landline rang. The old wall phone in the kitchen, a relic that only telemarketers and my parents used. It was my father. His voice, usually a gentle rumble, was strained. "Sophia, Steve says you're boycotting my birthday." The accusation was direct, a family trait. "I'm not boycotting, Dad. My children were expressly disinvited. I don't attend events where my immediate family is treated as optional." "Oh, for heaven's sake, don't lawyer this." I was a paralegal, not a lawyer, but the comparison was his favorite shorthand for my perceived obstinance. "Steve may have over-explained. I just want one peaceful gathering. Is that a crime? Your boys are wonderfully energetic, but at my age, the noise—" "Mercy and Noah, Dad. Their names are Mercy and Noah, and they're not wonderfully energetic noise. They're your grandchildren. They've been drawing you cards for a month." He sighed, the sound crackling down the line. "You're missing the point, sweetheart." "No, Dad," I said softly, the last of my hope for his intervention dissolving. "I think I'm finally seeing it." The weekend of the reunion arrived, dawning with a cruel, pristine blue sky. Instead of loading the car with duffels and fishing gear for the 3-hour drive north, we stuffed a smaller sedan with hiking boots and fleeces. We'd booked a last-minute cabin in the stark, beautiful mountains 2 hours west, a defiant pivot. "Mountain adventure," Michael announced, his voice forcefully cheerful. The kids, initially confused by the change in destination, were soon won over by promises of s'mores and a ranger's rumor of a young black bear sighted in the valley. We didn't mention the reunion. We were architects of a happy illusion.
The first day was a success. We hiked, identified animal tracks, and built a campfire ring from smooth gray stones. It was during this quiet, focused activity that Mercy, my solemn old soul daughter, asked her question. She didn't look up from the careful stone spiral she was creating. "Mommy," her voice was small against the vast mountain silence. "Is Grandpa's birthday party today?" Noah, who had been meticulously arranging marshmallows in order of size, froze. The bag crackled in his hands. "I made him a card," he said, as if this fact alone would bridge any distance. The air left the clearing. Michael's eyes met mine over the unlit fire pit. The carefully constructed illusion shimmered and threatened to dissolve. "How did you know about that, honey?" I asked, keeping my voice impossibly light. "Uncle Steve FaceTimed me last night after my bath. He asked if I was sad about missing the boat rides. He said they were going to use the big motorboat." The calculated cruelty of it took my breath away. It wasn't enough to exclude them. He had to make sure they tasted the specifics of their absence. Michael moved first.
He sat heavily on a felled log and patted his knee. "Noah, buddy, come here." Our son, picking up on the seismic shift in the atmosphere, scrambled onto his lap. Michael's arms closed around him. "We're not going to that party, champ." "Why?" The question was a wail from Mercy. All her careful composure shattered. "Did we do something wrong? Don't they like us anymore?" The dam broke. Noah, absorbing his sister's distress, buried his face in Michael's shirt, his small shoulders shaking with silent sobs. The explanation we tried to give, about grown-ups sometimes making complicated plans, was meaningless babble against the raw truth of their perceived rejection. The rest of the trip was a hollow pantomime of fun. The drive home Sunday evening was a silent, heavy capsule. The kids, emotionally spent, slept fitfully in the back. In the rearview mirror, I could see the dried salt tracks of tears on Mercy's cheeks. Michael's profile was a marble sculpture of contained fury, his knuckles bone white on the steering wheel. The gentle hum of the tires on asphalt was the only sound, a monotonous dirge for fractured family. Monday morning brought the mundane shock of routine. Pack lunches, find missing shoes, sign permission slips. The storm, however, was circling. It started at 8:15 a.m., just as Michael was pouring his second coffee. His phone, face down on the kitchen table, emitted a harsh, persistent buzz. Then mine in my back pocket vibrated like an angry hornet. Then his again. I found him in his home study, a small, book-lined room that usually smelled of old paper and peace. He wasn't working. He was standing, staring at his desktop monitor, his back rigid. On the screen was a dense, legal-looking document. "Michael? What's happening?" He didn't turn. "Remember how your brother orchestrated that graceful retirement for your dad 2 years ago, convinced him the stress was too much, that he should sell his controlling interest in Chinwood?" A cold knot formed in my stomach. Of course. It had been the source of a deep, cold rift. Our father adrift without the company that had been his identity. Steve, suddenly the king of the castle. You never liked how that went down. "No," Michael said, his voice devoid of his usual warmth. "I didn't, because I know a predatory financial move when I see one, even when it's wrapped in family ribbon." He finally turned. His face was calm, but his eyes held a terrifying, focused intensity. "The loan Steve used to buy your dad out? The 7-figure balloon note from First Regional Bank?" I nodded, confused about the direction. "I chair the Board Risk Assessment Committee for First Regional. Have for the last 18 months. I blinked, reprocessing my husband. Michael was a strategic consultant for mid-size firms. He traveled, he had meetings, he worked on a sleek laptop. He talked about streamlining operations in market synergies. I'd vaguely known he sat on a board or two. Chair. The word landed with new, formidable weight. "You never mentioned." "It's tedious, Sophia. Endless reports on liquidity ratios and commercial default probabilities. You ask how my day was, I'm not going to lead with that." He gave a faint, humorless smile. "But this morning, I pulled the Chinwood file. Their primary collateral for that loan? The lake house. The land, the docks, the main house, everything our grandfather built." The pieces clicked together with an almost audible snap. The beautiful, cursed lake house, the site of the celebration from which his grandchildren were banned? "He has a balloon payment due in 60 days, Michael continued, his voice clinical. "The loan officer was recommending an extension, standard practice for a legacy business with decent, if declining, revenue." He clicked his mouse. A new window opened. "I just filed a formal committee recommendation against the extension, flagged it for immediate senior review." The cold knot turned to ice. "Because of the party?" The words were a whisper. "No." He turned the monitor. On it was a series of scanned documents, official-looking forms with grim headings. "These are anonymous OSHA complaints filed by Chinwood warehouse employees over the last 8 months.
improper forklift maintenance, bypassed safety guards on saws to increase output, falsified equipment inspection logs. I scanned the documents. The dry, bureaucratic language described accidents waiting to happen, a forklift with faulty brakes, a saw that had taken a fingertip. He's gambling with people's safety to buff his profit margin, Sophia. The bank has a fiduciary and a moral duty. My recommendation cites significant concerns about executive judgment and corporate values, indicating elevated reputational and liability risk. He looked at me, the steel in his gaze unmistakable. The party just told me where to look. My phone rang. Steve, then Dad, then Mom. It became a symphony of panic. I watched the screen light up, go dark, light up again. Finally, I answered my father. "Sophia, in God's name, what have you done?" he roared, the fear in his voice louder than the anger. "Did you know about Michael's position? The bank is calling Steve's loan. They're citing his judgment. He'll lose the business. He could lose the lake house." I looked at Michael, standing steady amidst the tempest he had calmly summoned. I thought of Mercy's tear-streaked face asking if she was unlikable. I thought of my brother's smug FaceTime call. "That's terrible, Dad. But you wanted a peaceful, quiet weekend. It sounds like you're about to have plenty of it." The next 48 hours were a masterclass in familial collapse. The digital world erupted first. The long-dormant Chinwood family group chat became a hellscape of escalating texts, pleas, recriminations, demands for explanation from aunts and uncles I barely spoke to. My mother sent a series of increasingly dramatic voicemails, culminating in, "You're destroying your father. He built that business for you kids." Through it all, Michael was an island of calm. He attended his virtual meetings, drafted reports, and when he had breaks, he built elaborate Lego spaceships with Noah or helped Mercy with her nature journal. He declined every call. "They don't want a conversation," he said. "They want a surrender." On Wednesday night, the digital storm manifested physically. Steve stood on our front porch. No designer jacket, no polished loafers. He was in a wrinkled polo shirt, his face pale and drawn under the porch light, all his polished arrogance leached away. He looked, for the first time in his adult life, afraid. "Sophia," he said, his voice raspy, "please." I didn't invite him in. I stood in the doorway, the warmth of my home at my back, the chill of the evening between us. "The lake house. It's the heart of everything. Grandpa's hands are in every beam. Please, you can't let this happen." "You should have thought about that," I said, each word measured, "before you made my children feel unwelcome in its every room." He flinched. "It was Dad's idea, the adults-only thing. He's the one who said he couldn't handle the noise anymore." Michael appeared silently beside me, a solid, imposing presence. In his hand was a thin folder. "Then you should have said no," Michael said, his tone conversational, deadly. "Or you could have warned us privately, so we could have prepared the kids. Or you could have, I don't know, arranged a special fishing trip with them the following weekend. You had a universe of kinder choices. You chose the one that maximized their hurt. You made them feel small." Steve's eyes flickered to the folder. "What is that?" Michael said, offering it. Steve took it with trembling hands, flipping through the pages under the porch light. I watched the color drain completely from his face as he recognized the OSHA forms, the employee statements. These are disgruntled employees. They don't understand the pressure." "They understand when a safety guard is removed," Michael interrupted, his voice finally gaining an edge. "They understand missing fingertips. Ethics aren't compartmentalized, Steve. They're a through line. You demonstrated who you are. The bank is simply agreeing with you.
The reconciliation, when it painfully emerged, was not a single moment, but a series of awkward, halting steps. My father came the next day, alone. He seemed to have aged a decade in a week. He didn't ask about the bank or the business. He asked to see the children. Mercy, ever gracious, showed him her curated rock collection from the mountains, each stone labeled with a tiny piece of masking tape. Sparkly, smooth, looks like a tooth. Noah, after a moment of shy hesitation, retrieved the birthday card from his backpack. A crayon masterpiece of a stick figure grandpa catching a fish the size of a car under a huge, smiling sun. "Happy birthday, Grandpa. I miss you," it read in wobbly letters. My father took the card. His hands, which had once swung sledgehammers to help build the lake house dock, shook. He pulled Noah into a hug, then Mercy. When he spoke, his voice was thick, choked. "I'm so sorry," he whispered into Mercy's hair. "I was wrong. So wrong." Steve sold Chinwood Industrial to a competitor to cover the bank loan. He avoided bankruptcy, but was left with a hollowed-out shell of assets. He kept the lake house, but it was now mortgaged to the hilt, a beautiful, burdensome relic. The first thing he did, at our father's quiet but firm insistence, was to invite us all up, especially the children, for what he awkwardly termed a family redo. We went. The air was stiff at first, fraught with everything unsaid. But the lake, the great, timeless leveler, worked its magic. My father spent the entire morning on the dock with Mercy and Noah, patiently helping them bait hooks, untangle lines, and celebrate the tiny sunfish they reeled in as if they were marlin. I watched from the porch as Steve, after much visible internal struggle, walked down to the pebbled shore where Mercy was practicing her stone skipping. He said something I couldn't hear. She nodded cautiously. Then he knelt in the damp gravel, selected a flat stone, and showed her, his large hands guiding her small ones through the wrist-flicking motion. 1, 2, 3, 4 skips. Mercy's face lit up with a radiant, forgiving smile. Michael came to stand beside me, slipping an arm around my waist. We watched the scene in silence. "Too harsh?" he murmured finally, his lips close to my ear. I leaned into him, my gaze fixed on my children, now laughing, now included, now back in the fold of their family's story. I thought of the devastating clarity of their pain, a pain so easily dismissed by the adults around them as dramatic. "No," I said, the conviction solid in my core. "You taught them a lesson they'll carry forever, that their worth is non-negotiable, that their feelings are valid borders, and that when someone carelessly crosses those borders, the world doesn't just shrug. Sometimes it corrects."
Some people in our wider circle, hearing a fragmented version of events, argued that we'd conflated realms, that business is business and family is family, and never the twain should meet so destructively. But those people never had to look into the eyes of a heartbroken child and fabricate a reason for their exclusion that wouldn't poison their self-worth. They never had to mourn the death of a trust they didn't even know needed guarding. The lake house is still in the family. We go often now. Every time we arrive, my father has a new, silly ritual. He meets the car, swoops up Mercy and Noah first, and carries them, giggling, over the threshold of the screen door, proclaiming, "The most important guests have arrived. The party can finally start." The bridge wasn't burned. It was dismantled, plank by rotten plank, and rebuilt with stronger timber and better bolts. My children now know, in a way that lives deeper than words, that their place in this family is not a privilege granted for good behavior, convenient quiet, or a certain age. It is a birthright. It is unconditional.
And sometimes Michael and I agree in our quiet moments. Protecting that truth is worth more than any business, any legacy property, any silent, scotch-soaked, child-free party. It is the foundation upon which they will build their own lives, knowing they are and always will be